She was on the verge of having the family she always wanted.
They was planning on getting married.
When I got the invitation, I told them congratulations.
She was happy. You could tell that she was excited.
Until a horrific crime destroyed everything.
Smoke was coming from the apartment.
Gas was distributed throughout that house.
I don't wish this on nobody, not even my worst enemy.
The police have no shortage of suspects.
We just had disagreements. Our relationship, it was a love-hate. And we got into it.
But only one of them is a monster.
We have a video of you.
We just didn't see anything like this happening.
He wanted her in his life.
He didn't want her with anyone else.
So for him, it was like an all.
July 9th, 2019. It's Tuesday morning in Cleveland's Slavic Village neighborhood.
Slavic Village is an area of Cleveland that was home to a lot of immigrants.
It was called Slavic Village because a lot of Eastern Europeans migrated to that area of the city.
There's still a lot of history there, but over the years, you have seen a lot of change in the dynamics and the group of people that live there.
Slavic Village is recovering from the industrial downturn, so it's on the upturn. They're trying to bring it back.
But there are still plenty of challenges.
Cleveland, it has its crime sprees, and Slavic Village is no different.
And this morning, a woman walking near her Slavic Village apartment stumbles upon a crime that has hit close to home.
Oh my God!
She found a man's body lying in a vacant lot covered in blood.
He was shot once in the head, once in the chest. Just another Cleveland homicide.
But for the woman who finds the body, the dead man is more than a statistic.
She knew the victim.
That neighborhood still has that we take care of our own type of feeling. Neighbors look out for one another.
His name is David Cousin Jr.
He had a great reputation in the community.
David's neighbor calls 911, and when the police arrive, they confirm that he's dead.
They also asked the neighbor exactly where David lived.
They go to knock on doors and see if there are witnesses.
But as the neighbor and officers approach David's house, they notice something else.
The smoke appeared to be coming from the unit where Takira Collins lived with her 2 children.
They look through those windows. There's a lot of smoke.
It looked like there had been a fire inside.
It burned itself out.
However, the fire is still a tragedy.
Hey, I see kids in there.
Life had never been easy for 25-year-old Takira Collins.
Our father, he passed when she was 1 going on 2.
You could tell it was hard on her. It affected her a lot.
In the aftermath, Takira's mother struggled to make ends meet.
Growing up in poverty, it just made things very difficult. Childhood for us was stressful.
As a result, the siblings stuck together.
She wanted us to be inseparable. She always wanted to be there for me. I always wanted to be there for her. And the older we got, the stronger we got.
But as important as their bond was, Takira longed for more.
She did want family just because she didn't have her father growing up.
By 18, she'd found what she was looking for with Armand Johnson, a young man that lived in her neighborhood.
Being from the same neighborhood and being around things and seeing things and being through things together, that made their bond, strong and tight.
The couple fell in love, and in 2012, Takira gave birth to a baby boy.
He is beautiful.
He looks like you.
You think so?
Well, he is Armand Johnson Jr.
I know she was happy.
Once her son was born, Takira devoted herself to raising the child.
Her whole mindset changed. She just wanted to do better and be better. She was just focused. She was being a mom.
But while Takira was home with their child, Armand was out in the streets.
He ended up going to jail.
He was sent away for 5 years on robbery charges.
While Armand was in prison, Takira remained focused on raising their child.
Takira Collins was a dedicated mom, and she was a hard worker. She worked multiple jobs.
She also met someone new, a man named Anthony Stevens.
Hey, I saw you sitting here and I just had to come over and meet you.
I'm glad you did.
When Takira met Anthony, she was happy, head over heels.
That first meeting quickly blossomed into a romance.
They going out, dates, and they kicking it and spending time together.
Pretty soon, they welcomed their own bundle of joy into the world, Aubrey.
She was so happy that she had a girl. Like, finally, I got a mini-me.
But Takira's relationship with Anthony didn't last either.
I turned sour, but they was together for, I'd say, about a year.
She said he became overprotective and was giving her crazy vibes, so she ended things with him.
She was a strong, independent woman.
But she still longed for her kids to have a father figure in their lives.
She ended things with Anthony, and I believe that's when the feelings for Armand started to come back.
She wanted her son's father in his life.
Her son, you know, he older now. He asking about where my dad at. Can I talk to my dad?
Takira reached out, and Armand reconnected with his son and Takira.
He was able to give her the attention she needed, explain to her how things was going to be when he came home.
He told me like, oh, we worked it out.
They got engaged, and they wanted to move forward as a family.
And when Armand finally came home, they did become a family.
Aubrey obviously was a product of a different relationship, but this little girl became his own.
Armand also doted over his little boy.
Good job, man. Yeah.
I could see that he loved his dad.
And Takira was glad to have a family again.
I said, you happy? I'm happy. That's all that matters.
Things was looking good.
But now, officers responding to a shooting have spotted smoke coming from Takira's apartment.
They went to investigate and made a horrifying discovery.
Hey, I see kids in there.
They saw the 2 children in the house.
They were lying motionless on the floor.
Ready?
The first responders make a forced entry, but they're too late.
Both of the children were dead from smoke inhalation.
You had a tremendous amount of smoke, which is what caused the kids to die.
But the children aren't the only victims. Moving deeper into the apartment, the officers make another grim discovery.
Police discovered Takira's body.
Unlike her children, Takira didn't die in the fire.
Takira had been shot 10 times.
Takira Collins was making a fresh start with her ex, Armand Johnson.
Armand had just finished serving 5 years in prison.
Her and Armand was back together, and things was looking good.
But now, police have found Takira and her 2 children dead inside her apartment.
Takira had been shot 10 times.
A lot of those injuries were from the back. I believe she was running to her bedroom, trying to get away.
Then the killer had apparently tried to set fire to the apartment, hoping to hide the evidence.
Since the children didn't have any visible injuries, police believe they died from smoke inhalation.
One of the huge factors in this case is the fact that this house was newly renovated and had brand new windows. There were no gaps in these windows. That was crucial because when this house was set aflame, the fire didn't get any oxygen in order for this whole structure to come down. So that's why we're not looking at a pile of rubble.
When homicide detectives arrive, they find clear evidence that the fire had been deliberately set.
There was a gas can left in her bedroom.
Detectives also recover multiple 9mm shell casings, as well as Takira's phone.
Takira's phone is laying on the sofa in the living room.
There were no indications of a robbery or any signs of forced entry.
Adding that to the number of wounds Takira suffered leads detectives to one conclusion.
This was a crime of passion.
Shooting Takira that many times was definitely personal.
10 shots is overkill.
The detectives suspect the children slept through the shooting.
But Takira's daughter woke sometime after the fire had been set.
Aubrey got up from her bed. We know that because she had soot in the bottom of her feet. And when you look at the walls in the house, you see her handprints walking down to her brother's room.
Police found the two children clinging to one another inside her brother's bedroom.
It's heartbreaking.
But did their deaths have anything to do with the murder of their neighbor, David Cousin Jr.?
After looking over the apartment where Takira and her children died, detectives went to the vacant lot nearby where the neighbor found David.
They would have been looking for shell casings and looking to see if these things were connected.
In the grass, detectives recover one more 9mm shell casing.
It was a match to the ones found in Takira's bedroom, which made detectives believe they were looking for the same shooter in both murders.
While the detectives work, onlookers start to gather outside the crime scene tape.
This had a lot of attention. There were family members showing up. Everyone from the neighborhood is out. It's a chaotic scene at this point.
The neighborhood was on edge to see 2 babies and a mother killed.
Neighbors are just as dismayed by David's murder.
People that lived in Slavic Village in that neighborhood were shocked because who would do something to David?
In his community, he was a very well-respected individual.
But other than being neighbors, there was no real connection between David and Takira.
It was just a high-by situation. This my neighbor. It was nothing like no relationship or none of that. He had a girlfriend. He was about to get married.
Hoping to learn more about Takira, detectives turn to her family who have started to gather after hearing the horrific news.
Can I see my baby?
Hey, we're so sorry for your loss. When I get home, missed calls. It was coming from our uncle. So I called him. I asked him what's going on. And he told me, like, your sister's, she's gone. The first thing that came to my mind was, okay, well, what about the kids? Where are the kids?
Her family had just a profound sense of loss when, you didn't just lose one family member. You lost 3 and you lost babies.
But the family also says they know who did it.
Family members thought that only one person was responsible.
It had to be Anthony.
And her mother says she has proof.
She sent me a text last night about her youngest father.
Takira's mother received a text from her saying that Anthony was over the house.
And according to Takira's text, Anthony had a gun.
Cleveland detectives have reason to believe Takira Collins' ex-boyfriend, Anthony Stevens, may be responsible for the shooting and arson that killed Takira, her 2 children, and their neighbor, David Cousin Jr.
Takira's mother said she received a late-night text from her daughter that said Anthony had come by the apartment.
He had a gun, and she felt threatened.
Did you tell her to call the police?
I didn't see it until this morning.
Takira's mother said she tried to call Takira as soon as she saw the text.
And she didn't answer, so I came straight over.
Do you think he killed her?
It had to be Anthony.
She said if something was to ever happen to her, Aubrey's father did it.
Takira's mother tells the detectives that Anthony and Takira were having issues over the custody of their daughter.
She was keeping Aubrey from him because he just got crazier to the point where it scared her.
While detectives are talking to the family, Armand Johnson, the father of Takira's oldest child, arrives at the scene.
Where's Takira? Takira!
Oh, you guys
Where's Takira?
Detectives pulled Armand aside and broke the news that Takira and the kids were dead.
Oh no!
He said he received a late night text just like Takira's mother that said Anthony had come over and he was threatening her.
I got a text message saying...
And also like Takira's mother, he says he hadn't seen the text until it was too late.
He was devastated with what happened.
And the detectives were afraid he would do something rash.
Where is he?
Sir,
no, where's Anthony? I need to see him.
To keep Armand from interfering with the investigation, the detectives take him into custody.
He had an outstanding warrant for some other probation violation.
Once Armand's in custody, the detectives take him down to the station for a formal statement.
He eagerly wants to help.
Although since he was under arrest, the detectives kept him cuffed.
Right now you're under arrest for a warrant that you have.
The detectives begin by asking Armand about his relationship with Takira.
He explained that he'd moved in with Takira after he'd gotten out of prison.
However, Armand also says he'd moved out a couple of weeks before the murders.
Why did you leave?
Because we just had disagreements.
So how has your relationship been with her recently? You guys talk?
Yeah, we talk. She still let me come see my kids.
In fact, Armand had said that he took both of the children to a family reunion in Detroit that weekend.
When was the last time you seen them, those two children?
Sunday when I dropped them off.
He says he didn't have any contact with Takira or the kids after that.
Then when I woke up this morning, I received a text from yesterday.
Armand said the text was about Anthony coming to the apartment and threatening her.
She never said to you what this was all about?
No.
Or why that there was such a problem between them?
No.
Finally, while he's not a suspect, the detectives wrap up the interview by asking Armand where he was the night of the murders.
He said he was home asleep.
I fell asleep right about 9:30, 10 o'clock.
Who can verify that you were home at 9:30 sleeping?
My grandmother, my aunt, my father.
They were all there?
Yes.
He has an alibi. It's not him.
But would Takira's other ex be able to say the same?
Anthony came forward and turned himself in to be questioned.
You're not under arrest. Let me make that clear. We read these to everybody because it's a criminal investigation.
After reading Anthony his rights, the detectives ask about his relationship with Takira.
It was shaky. She crazy.
When you
say she was crazy, like,
what do you mean by that?
It was just a point in time in my life where I wanted to have my cake and eat it too, and she wasn't with it.
Meaning you want to see other women?
Yeah.
And according to Anthony, he hadn't even seen Takira in more than a year.
When was the last time you actually spoken with Takira?
I would have to say since my daughter was months old, literally.
He was a non-factor in her life, a non-factor in his daughter's life, sadly.
Although he said that was primarily Takira's fault.
I've never reached out to her because every time I even tried to talk to her, it's an argument. It's going to be something that I don't want it to blow up into.
So in other words, Anthony had just confirmed the custody issues that Takira's family had told the detectives about.
But does that mean they were right to suspect Anthony was her killer?
At this point, detectives confronted him with the text messages that Armand and Takira's mother received.
Anthony reads the message and denies it's true.
He maintained that he had not seen Takira and he was nowhere near her house the night before. He said that somebody was setting him up.
Who would want to jam you up in a quadruple homicide?
I have no idea. I want to find out my damn self.
Anthony also claims to have an alibi.
Mondays, I work 5 to close.
Anthony had a job making sandwiches at the time these offenses happened.
Hey, take a look at this.
When police follow up on Anthony's alibi, his story checks out.
Footage from the sub shop. They were able to prove that Anthony was at work. There was surveillance footage. They even saw his time card.
And the texts to Takira's mother and Armand?
It's a big red herring, thrown out by the real killer.
But who? Desperate for leads, the detectives run a record search on Takira.
When you look at a victim in a case, their history can guide you to some extent as to who the perpetrator of this crime is.
When detectives look into Takira's history, they find an immediate red flag.
She had taken out an order of protection against another ex-boyfriend.
His name is Darius Murphy.
According to the protective order, Darius had been abusive.
She was beaten. She was also bitten.
Well, because violent things happen between you two. That's why.
Detectives investigating the murders of Takira Collins, her 2 children, and her neighbor David Cousin Jr. have just learned about an order of protection she took out against an ex-boyfriend named Darius Murphy.
In the request for the order, Takira accused Darius of abusing her.
Is there a possible connection?
Okay, take a seat there for me.
Hoping to find out, the detectives bring Darius in for an interview.
Well, because you were a previous boyfriend with her who had a protection order issued against you, and violent things happen between you two. That's why.
Darius admits he had a relationship with Takira, but he says it was brief.
So much like August or something.
2018.
Yeah, last year.
That was after Takira broke up with the father of her daughter, Anthony, but while her boyfriend, Armand, was still in jail.
She said it might be a relationship because she was already engaged with Armand.
She told you this relationship between you and I can't go on after he gets out.
You guys can't stop.
Darius claimed that he was okay with their arrangement, but the detectives aren't so sure.
Was this an if I can't have you, no one can type of situation?
You have someone who is engaged in a crime of passion, jealousy, anger.
Plus, Takira claimed he'd been violent with her before.
You ever assault her? Okay. I understand.
People put this fight all the time, argue, but
physically is what I'm asking you.
I probably bit her or something, but I never know.
She alleges you bit her on the back. Okay.
Of course, he'd also denied he had anything to do with Takira's murder.
So let me ask you, and I gotta ask you this. It's important. Did you go over to East 63rd Street and have a confrontation with Takira and she killed her?
I never did.
Instead, Darius insists the detectives should be looking at Takira's other ex, Armand Johnson.
He said Armand was abusive, according to what Takira had supposedly told him.
She said he used to beat her black and blue, and now he used to put his hands on her in front of the kids.
A lot of times people assume having children makes a relationship better, but having children can also make a relationship an unhealthy environment because a lot of people don't want the responsibility of caring for children. And that happens with a lot of men, that they're just not ready to do that whole commitment piece.
However, Darius doesn't know if the abuse continued once Armand got out of jail.
He said he last talked to her a couple of months before the murders.
Okay. And Armand had already been out of jail.
He was out of jail now. He was talking about them, and she told me how it was.
According to Darius, Takira said things were going okay between her and Armand.
She didn't say anything bad. at that time.
She says she's still engaged to him?
At that time, yeah.
Could there be something to Darius's claims about an abusive relationship?
Takira had broken off the engagement.
Or was Darius simply trying to throw detectives off his trail?
Despite Darius's claims about Armand, the detectives pressed him for an alibi.
He's going to corroborate your times for Monday, July 8th through July 9th.
Curiously, Darius hesitates.
I don't want to be putting people in
Well,
this.
you're going to have to because right now you're in the middle of this.
To the detectives, it sounded like Darius was hiding something.
Hoping to find out what that might be, the detectives head back to the crime scene.
They canvassed the neighborhood, looking for surveillance cameras that could place Darius in the vicinity the night of the murders.
Police start to focus in on a McDonald's that's very close to Takira's house.
In fact, when detectives review the footage, the surveillance cameras outside the restaurant recorded Takira taking her kids through the drive-thru just hours before the murders.
You may want to check this out.
It's our last known footage, our last time we see Takira and these kids alive.
But what was interesting to detectives was what the cameras recorded a few hours later.
A man runs across the parking lot from the direction of Takira's house and gets in a waiting car.
Could this be the killer making his getaway?
Not too many people go to McDonald's and get picked up.
From the footage, it's tough to make out the man's identity.
The cameras, they're not clear enough.
However, the cameras did offer detectives a good look at the man's shoes.
We could see the design on these shoes and how specific these shoes were.
But who was the man wearing those shoes? It isn't long before the detectives get a call from someone who claims to know.
I called downtown. Hey, I got some information on this case. I know exactly who it is.
Detectives investigating the murders of Takira Collins, her 2 children, and her neighbor David Cousin Jr. have just received an urgent phone call from Takira's friend, Kayla Hodges.
I knew exactly who did it. It was no doubt in my mind.
According to Kayla, the killer was Armand Johnson, the father of Takira's oldest child.
Armand, I knew for a fact. But it just was like, damn, why you do the kids?
When Kayla comes in to sit down with the detectives, she says she always knew there was trouble in the relationship.
I could see that she wasn't happy. Like, yeah, you there, you being a father, but you not there.
She told you this?
No, not at first.
She did tell me some stuff, but she ain't telling us everything.
Kayla says Takira also kept her family in the dark.
It's a dirty secret. And because it is cyclical, you don't want to tell someone what happened with your abuser because in a week, in a month, in a few days, things are going to be good. And you don't want them to alienate that person from your life.
But according to Kayla, the trouble between Armand and Takira got so bad that she couldn't hide it from everyone.
I got a call. I'm in the hospital. I got stitches. Got some stitches for what? Oh, Armand got mad and hit me in my lip.
Kayla says it was only then that Takira revealed the truth about Armand.
The relationship was just really, really toxic.
He wouldn't stop putting his hands on her. He was basically insecure about any relationship with any males that he thought was more than a friendship.
The perpetrator in the domestic violence feels a lack of control, but does not feel that they have done anything wrong.
And unfortunately, a lot of women don't think that they can get out of an abusive situation.
Which is why, according to Kayla, Takira was secretly relieved when Armand went to prison.
It's like, when he went away, she don't have to deal with that no more.
But Kayla says that Takira's resolve weakened while Armand was away.
You start feeling bad from somebody, get the text and writing letters. He incarcerated. That's your child's father. Because I wouldn't say I wouldn't do the same thing. I probably would have.
Over a time period, a person begins to start minimizing the negative of the relationship to the point where they're like, it wasn't that bad with this person.
And when Armand got out of prison, the couple reconciled.
He's sorry, he apologized.
But he hadn't changed at all.
He started abusing her again.
Yeah.
He's supposed to busted up her lip pretty bad. Gave her a black eye. But unfortunately, they kept me out of the loop. They didn't want me to do anything to Armand.
However, while Takira didn't tell her brother about the abuse, she did break off her engagement with Armand.
She was no longer going to put up with his behavior. She didn't want her kids around it.
When she was finally done and walking away, I could see a change. Like, she was happy. You could tell that she was excited for the new adventure.
That's extremely important and relevant in a case like this.
So you think Armand did this?
Oh, I'm sure of it.
The picture Kayla paints sounds plausible to detectives.
For him, it was like an all or nothing. He wanted her in his life. And what is scary about domestic violence relationships is that the most dangerous time is when you decide to leave. And we can make and pass laws, but at the end of the day, those things are just words on a piece of paper. And that's not going to protect anyone against 10 gunshots. If someone is intent on killing you because they can't have you, they're going to do it.
Question is, can detectives prove it?
They got a search warrant to Armand's grandmother's home where he was living with his aunt.
Hi, how can I help you?
Man, we have a warrant to search your property.
Oh, dear. Okay. Sure, come on in.
They don't find a smoking gun, but what they do find is almost as damning.
They discovered some very distinct shoes, the same ones that were in the surveillance footage.
You look at the shoes and definitely say they're the same shoes. And then there's shoes that happen to have gasoline on them.
Whoever set the fire had spread gasoline around the apartment.
They also had blood on them as well.
Before sending the shoes off to the lab for testing, the detectives lean on Armand's aunt.
Earlier, he told police she would vouch that he was home on the night of the murder.
But under pressure from the detectives, she caves.
So was your nephew at home all night on July 8th?
Yes. Yeah. No. Well, not all night.
She admits that on the night of the murders, she picked him up at the McDonald's down the street from Takira's apartment.
I don't know that she truly knew what was going on. You don't want to believe that he's capable of what he did to these kids. That's unthinkable.
Between the aunt's story, the surveillance video, and the shoes, detectives were able to place Armand near the scene of the crime on the night of the murder.
2 days after the murders, the detectives pull Armand out of the jail cell where he's being held on a parole violation and confront him with what they've learned.
I have your aunt talking to us, telling us that she picked you up in the area at the time of this occurrence.
No, it was not.
Armand was denying that he committed these crimes.
But it's no use.
We have a video of you.
However, there was still one thing that detectives wanted to know.
The only thing I do not understand is how you could possibly burn your children alive.
If you in a domestic violence situation, you gotta be strong. You gotta figure out how to get you and your kids out. You gotta take them away from that situation. The hardest part was seeing them kids in the casket. That took a toll on me. I'm still not together after seeing that. Check on them strong friends, them strong family members, because they might just be looking for somebody to say, is you really, truly okay?
Cleveland police are convinced that 26-year-old Armand Johnson killed his ex-fiancée, Takira Collins, her 2 children, and their neighbor, David Cousin Jr.
You went over there
No, I did not.
and you killed her.
No, I did not.
Armand tries to deny it, but the detectives have proof.
Your own aunt is saying she picked you up that morning from that area right there, and she took you home.
Detectives also have surveillance video to back up his aunt's story.
Armand being captured on camera in the neighborhood at McDonald's was instrumental in the case.
But what the detectives really want is a confession.
In the interview, detectives leaned hard on the fact that Armand's own son had died.
I can understand wanting to hurt her, but not the kids. I just don't understand that part of it.
However, despite the pressure, Armand refuses to crack.
I need to talk to my lawyer.
The interview over, the detectives book Armand on 4 counts of murder.
There's an aggravated murder for Takira, for each one of the kids, and for David Cousin.
As news of the arrest spreads, the community rallies around Takira's family.
Everyone was on social media screaming no justice, no peace.
But as the case moves to trial, the family has a long wait ahead of them.
We had COVID in the middle from the time that this crime happened until the time it went to trial. So there were a lot of delays in addition to what you would normally have with a capital case.
When Armand goes on trial in August of 2022, the prosecutors argue that he just couldn't accept that his relationship with Takira was over.
That was the catalyst. He didn't want to be without her.
And it's been documented that he had an anger issue, that he was jealous of her, he didn't want her with anyone else.
So, on the night of the murders, he'd gone to Takira's apartment.
What do you want?
We need to talk.
No, we don't. We have nothing to talk about.
The kid's asleep?
Yeah.
I'm coming in.
No, you're not. You're not welcome here. You need to leave.
Oh, I ain't going nowhere.
Takira tried to run, but it was no use.
He fired at her at least 10 times.
Then, once Takira was dead, he'd spread gasoline around the apartment.
When you look at where that gas was distributed throughout that house, Armand Johnson absolutely intended those kids to lose their lives. He didn't want to leave any witnesses to what he had done.
The prosecutors believe that's also why Armand killed David Cousin Jr.
He was just an innocent bystander, coming in the house at the wrong time.
Armand saw him as someone who could uncover this whole event. That's why he shot and killed him.
That was just so sad that he had to lose his life.
According to the prosecutors, there's no doubt that Armand was responsible.
They had the aunt, the video, and the shoes recovered during the search that all placed him near the scene of the crime.
And that's not all the prosecutors have.
The shoes he was wearing that night had Takira's DNA on them, likely from blood spatter.
Add it all up, it's more than enough for the jury.
Armand is found to be guilty.
He received 4 life sentences without parole. I can sleep well at night knowing that he's never getting out of prison.
Takira's loved ones are less satisfied with the outcome.
It wasn't enough for me. I'm sorry. It wasn't enough. That's 4 lives, 2 adults and 2 kids. Then you still living, you still eating, you still breathing. No, that wasn't good enough for me. Still can't sleep at night.
While they still struggle to accept their loss, Takira's friends and family hope her story can help save others from a similar fate.
I don't wish this on nobody, not even my worst enemy. If you going through that situation, get out.
Pay attention to the red flags. Don't ignore the warning signs. Don't wait before it's too late.
But most of all, Takira's loved ones cherish her memory.
She was my everything. Me and her told each other everything. I don't have that no more.
Takira Lachey Collins was my best friend, and she was a beautiful person. Her kids was adorable angels. And they will be forever missed.
How's school been going for you all?
She was a busy single mom raising 4 kids.
She loved her kids. She loved being a mom. She's responsible for everything.
Until she found the right partner.
This police officer just sweeps her off her feet. It was an instant chemistry.
This seems to be the one. She was anticipating being with this man.
But it wasn't meant to be.
There was a single gunshot wound to her head. She had blood all over her. Who would do this to her?
The search for answers uncovers a scandalous secret.
The instant they find out, that changes things.
A lot of people were outraged.
There seems to be some sort of pattern.
I don't think it's coincidental.
And the final outcome could tear the town apart.
There were tensions between the black community and police. This was the summer George Floyd had been murdered.
People started to demand justice, accountability, respect for our people.
May 19th, 2019. It's Sunday morning in Oxford, Mississippi, a charming southern town that's home to Ole Miss, the University of Mississippi's main campus.
Oxford has about 25,000 people. Most of those are students, so it's a vibrant community.
It's a nice college town. Downtown is beautiful, but it's also very small, so everybody knows everybody.
It's a fun atmosphere, very close-knit community.
Although there was a time when Oxford was sharply divided. In 1962, when James Meredith became the first African American to attend Ole Miss, a mob of white supremacists descended on campus.
2 people died in the rioting before federal troops were able to restore order.
They've come leaps and bounds from that.
Race relations have really gotten better from what they were 50, 60 years ago.
But one tragic crime will reveal the tensions that still simmer beneath the surface. It's around 2 in the afternoon when Dominique Clayton's 8-year-old son returns from a weekend away.
He and his brothers had just gotten back from staying with his uncle on Friday and Saturday.
He's ready to tell his mom about, everything that had happened while he was away.
But moments after he enters his mother's room, he runs back out the front door to find his grandmother.
Grandma, Grandma! He was clearly upset by something.
What's wrong, baby?
It's Mom.
She's trying to figure out what's going on.
Eventually, the little boy manages to give his grandmother the terrible news.
He's saying, Mom's not waking up. And I see blood.
Mom? 32-year-old Dominique Clayton's world revolved around her 4 children.
She was a doting mother.
She loved her kids.
I made your favorites.
But as much love as she had to give, things hadn't worked out in the long term with any of their fathers.
A single mother of 4 has the world on her shoulders. She's responsible for everything.
She cared for those children and tried to provide for them to the best of her ability.
You definitely need to work on your homework today, though.
She kept a roof over their head, kept them fed, well clothed.
Hi, babies.
Dominique also had tremendous support from her family.
Anybody need some help?
Because she was so busy trying to work, her family really was committed to helping her.
Her mother lived right next door to her. That was just the support that she needed. They were a close-knit family, and she was a family-oriented person, and it definitely takes a village.
Having her mom around also meant that Dominique was able to sometimes enjoy life as a young single woman.
She's at the age where you want love, you want attention, you want affection.
It's easy to lose yourself as a woman getting wrapped up in family life.
She was really trying to make the most out of her life.
Which in Oxford meant hanging out at one of the many bars and restaurants lining the city's charming Courthouse Square.
The square is the place to be. Everyone goes to the square.
I'm so glad my mom got the kids.
It was at the square one night in 2018 that Dominique met Matthew Kenny.
Somebody come to take this spot? Could I hop in? Or?
Of course, no, voluntarily.
The moment she met Matthew, it was an instant chemistry.
He couldn't resist her easygoing spirit.
She was bubbly. She was the life of the party.
There's no way you're here alone.
Dominique was smitten to have that attention.
That sparked something in her, made her feel wanted and desired.
She's usually caring for her children, so this really felt good to her.
As it turned out, Matthew knew all about trying to squeeze in a social life around a busy schedule.
He was a police officer with the city of Oxford.
He was a member of the department's mounted patrol unit.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. That's not a problem.
No, not at all.
She was a person that admired cops. She wanted to be a law enforcement herself.
So to meet someone who was doing that very thing attracted her to him.
Within days of that first meeting, the cop and the single mom were a couple.
It didn't take long for things to get serious between them.
They were spending time together when they could,
which wasn't always easy, given their busy schedules.
He would come over after his shift when the kids were asleep.
It was the easiest way for them to have some time alone.
You have a good day?
Matthew also found ways to make life a little easier for Dominique and her kids.
I got a couple surprises for you. I've been waiting to do it all day, though, so...
Really?
Close your eyes.
He was helping pay her rent. He even bought her a car.
Open.
And he was helping her save up for a home.
I'm sure that was, a big help for her.
What is that?
And it seemed like the next step was only a matter of time.
Matthew had, in fact, given Dominique a ring.
Look, it's not an engagement ring, but I just want you to know that I'm really serious about us.
This seems to be the one.
It didn't seem like she was going to be a single mother for much longer at all.
Of course.
But now, Dominique's 8-year-old son has just found her unresponsive in bed, surrounded by a pool of blood.
Can you imagine what this is going to be like for him? Just how traumatizing it is.
Take everybody in the house.
Alerted by her grandson, Dominique's mom rushes inside.
Of course, she has no idea what to think.
She's panicking, and she goes to the house to see what's going on.
Dominique! Dominique! Are you...
She comes inside and sees her daughter there with blood everywhere.
Dominique!
She immediately calls the police.
911, what's your emergency?
Something wrong with my daughter, please!
When the officers arrived on the scene, they find Dominique laying in bed, face down.
And spreading around her is a pool of blood.
There was a single gunshot wound to the right side of her head. Is she...
Sorry.
No!
Could be a possible suicide.
Police confirmed that her daughter was, in fact, dead.
Mother of 4, Dominique Clayton, was settling into an exciting new relationship with Oxford, Mississippi policeman Matthew Kenny.
Their relationship took off really quickly.
You like it for real?
I love it.
They dove pretty deep in the relationship rather quickly. It wasn't long before they got very serious. He's been helping her pay her rent, and he bought her a ring.
But now Dominique and Matthew's promising future has taken a tragic turn.
Her 8-year-old son came home and found his mother laying in her bed unresponsive.
This life would never be the same.
To the officers at the scene, it appears she may have died by her own hand.
Because there was a single gunshot wound to her head, they thought that this might be a suicide. There's no sign of forced entry. Nothing seems to indicate at all that there was any sort of struggle in the home.
But after a closer examination of the bed, police rule out the possibility that Dominique killed herself.
There was no gun.
Everyone knows that without a weapon being nearby, it could not have been suicide.
Can you go ahead and start me MBI?
Once Oxford police realized Dominique's death was a homicide, they hand the case over to the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation.
Matthew's co-workers, they knew that he was dating her. And so a police officer immediately requested the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation to come in.
Under normal circumstances, the police department would handle this case themselves. But since it was a police officer involved intimately with the deceased, that poses a conflict of interest, and they would need to call an outside investigator.
When the MBI investigators look over the crime scene, they agree with the Oxford police's opinion that the shooting was a homicide.
It even appeared that she was sleeping when she was shot.
She was laying down in her bed and her head was on the pillow, and there was a single spent slug found in the pillow.
The slug appears consistent with a .380 caliber handgun.
A .380, a .38 Special, and a 9mm all fire the same diameter bullet. But a .380 slug is generally lighter in weight.
However, there's no shell casing at the scene.
The shooter probably picked it up. Or it could mean that the murder weapon was a revolver.
But why would someone murder the mother of 4? Looking for insight, the investigators turned to Dominique's family.
Several of Dominique's family members had rushed over as soon as they heard the news.
They were completely distraught.
But they are able to shed some light on the hours leading up to her murder.
Do you know what time she got in last night?
It had to be about midnight or so, because I saw her car lights come down the driveway.
Our family mentioned that she decided to go out, have a nice night at the square. As far as they knew, she got home by herself.
But by the next morning, she was dead.
We know that she would have been killed sometime during the night before sunrise.
Did you hear any gunshots?
No, I must have slept through them.
Because her position in the bed, the way she was lying on the pillow, must have muffled the sound.
Okay. Do you know if Dominique had any issues with anyone?
No, not really.
The community loved her, her family loved her. She was nice in the neighborhood, like everybody always remembered seeing her smiling.
The only person the family says Dominique ever had trouble with was her next-door neighbor, Isaiah Hill.
Apparently, Dominique had issues with him, and they didn't seem to get along very well. This neighbor, Isaiah Hill, played loud music, had a lot of people over.
Was really disruptive for Dominique, and especially her children, keeping them up at night.
But that doesn't strike the investigators as a motive for murder.
What about her boyfriend?
Matthew?
Was there any issues between them?
No, he took good care of her.
The family says things seem to be going well.
They seem to be in a steady and stable relationship.
He had bought her a car and a ring.
But there was one problem.
What's that?
Well, Matthew's married.
Mississippi Bureau of Investigation agents have learned that their murder victim Dominique Clayton's boyfriend, Matthew Kenny, isn't just a cop. He's also married.
The instant they find out that he's married, that changes things.
According to her family, Dominique was well aware that she was dating a married man.
He did not mislead Dominique. He was having an affair. Dominique did know that Matthew was married, and Dominique's close friends knew, her family knew.
It always bothered me, but he seemed to love her.
A lot of people were saying that she wasn't just like a flick. It was something that had been going on for a long time, and she was anticipating being with this man.
However, there was one complication. Matthew's wife.
I don't believe the wife knew that he was having an affair. They kept it a secret.
Could she have found out about the relationship somehow? Could she be involved?
From the crime scene, the investigators head to the Lafayette County Sheriff's Office to speak with Matthew.
Since Matthew was an Oxford police officer, they conducted the interview at the Sheriff's Department to avoid a potential conflict of interest.
Thanks for meeting with us.
Absolutely.
We just had a couple questions to ask.
Guys, I totally get it.
He is completely open and transparent. He confirms everything that the family has already told them.
Matthew said he's married, but from his understanding, his wife had no idea that he was having an affair.
And, you know, because of what happened.
You gotta rule me out.
Exactly.
Married man dating a woman that has just come up dead, he would have been a suspect from the jump.
Although Matthew swears he would never do anything to hurt Dominique.
From the moment I met her, there was just something about her that was so alive.
He said they hit it off great and they were in love.
I was just with her a few hours before, so I actually can't believe she's gone.
He's very open and honest about his emotions.
He seemed heartbroken over her loss.
And he says he'll do anything he can to help find Dominique's killer.
Whatever you guys need, anything, I'm here to help, okay?
Okay, well, maybe start by walking us through what all happened last night.
Matthew says that Dominique was out at a bar.
They'd been communicating via text throughout the night.
You didn't meet her there?
No, I was at work.
He said he was at the stables, tending to the mounted patrol horses.
But according to Matthew, Dominique had called him around midnight.
Matthew said that Dominique called him from the bar. It was raining, so she asked Matthew to give her a ride to her car so that she would be able to drive home.
I can come now.
He said he'd driven down to the bar to get her.
Hurry, hurry.
Oh my gosh, I got so.
He picked her up from the square, took her to her car.
Thank you so much for dropping me off.
Of course. Call me when you get home,
Okay.
Matthew says that after he dropped Dominique off at her car, he'd driven back to the stables.
Hey, you make it home okay?
Yeah, I just pulled in.
Okay, good.
He said that he knew she had arrived home because he heard the sound of the door.
You want me to come over when I get off later?
No, not tonight. I'm actually pretty tired.
She wanted to lay down, and so he didn't think much of it.
As far as he knew, she was able to get home and was going on to bed.
You were at the stables the entire time?
Yes, sir. Till about 2:30 a.m.
You didn't go to Dominique's?
No.
He said after he took her to her car, he went back to work. He texted her around 2:30 a.m. and told her good night.
At that point, he left and went home.
His account of the evening appears to check out, too.
He allows the police to go through his phone,
just to make sure everything matched up with what he had told them.
The incoming calls from Dominique, the 2:30 a.m. text message, it was all there.
We'll be in touch if we learn anything new.
Okay. After talking to Matthew, the investigators head to the home that he shares with his wife, Melissa.
Maybe Matthew's wife wasn't as unsuspecting as he claimed.
They're wondering if she had anything to do with this.
Miss Kenny?
Yes?
I don't know if you've heard, but a woman was killed last night.
I did. Matthew called from the station, said he'd be a while. Is he part of the investigation?
You could say that.
She seems to have no idea about the affair.
They have a life together, a home together. They have kids together.
But she soon learns she wasn't the only woman in Matthew's life.
She is very upset learning this news.
She had no indication at all that Matthew was having an affair.
All those Nazis said he was working late. How could it be so stupid?
It was just an awkward moment for the investigators.
But they still need answers.
Just to make sure, they asked Melissa where was she during the night of the murder.
What, you think I killed her?
I'm sorry, ma'am, but we do need...
No. I understand.
She told the investigators that she had nothing to do with Dominique's death.
And she's able to provide an airtight alibi.
At that point, they had no reason to believe that she was involved with the crime.
They believe it couldn't have been her.
Thank you.
Of course.
Which takes the investigators back to, if not square one, at least back to the square.
Since Dominique had been drinking on the square the night before her death, the investigators wondered if something could have happened while she was out there. Could she have run into someone?
Someone who might have followed her home.
Detectives tracked down the friend she was with that night at the bar.
Her friend does confirm Matthew's story, that Dominique did contact him for a ride home.
When asked if anything unusual happened while they were out that evening, Dominique's friend says no.
She said it was just a chill girls' night of drinking and catching up.
Can you think of anyone who might have a reason to hurt Dominique?
Well, there's this guy, Isaiah.
The neighbor?
Yeah.
Dominique's family had brought up Isaiah earlier, but it didn't seem like much of a lead.
They mentioned that Isaiah would play loud music, he would have parties, always people around. She didn't like that, so they always had words.
And according to her friend, Dominique had done more than just exchange words with him.
She even called the police and got him arrested.
Mississippi Bureau of Investigation agents looking into the murder of Dominique Clayton have learned the mother of four had a long-running beef with a neighbor named Isaiah Hill.
Dominique had issues with him. He was always having loud parties.
It got to the point where it would keep her children up at night due to the noise.
Dominique's family had mentioned the trouble with Isaiah, but the investigators didn't think it sounded like a motive for murder.
Until one of Dominique's friends adds some additional context.
It got so bad, she called Isaiah's landlord and tried to get him to do something.
That didn't get her anywhere.
So she took matters into her own hands.
And after a little digging on the internet, Dominique had found some leverage over Isaiah.
She discovered that Isaiah had some warrants out for his arrest.
He was wanted in DeSoto County, which is about an hour northwest of Oxford.
One quick phone call to the DeSoto County Sheriff's Department, and Dominique figured her troubles with Isaiah were over.
he was in fact incarcerated due to Dominique contacting the authorities.
Or were her troubles only beginning?
When the investigators looked into Isaiah, they learned he had been released from the DeSoto County Jail the day before Dominique's murder.
This may have been some type of retaliation.
When the detectives bring Isaiah in for questioning, he denies having anything to do with Dominique's murder.
Look, I know she called the law on me, but I would never do anything like that.
You sure? We know you got out of jail the day before the murder.
Man, I wasn't even here.
He said that after his release, he had gone to Memphis for his daughter's high school graduation.
I almost missed it.
When did you get back from Memphis?
Not until Sunday. I spent the night at my mama's house.
If that was true, then he couldn't have killed Dominique.
However, an alibi isn't all that Isaiah offers investigators.
Yo, if y'all really want to know who did it, y'all need to ask that cop that's always coming around.
Officer Kenny.
He said, I had heard some things about Matthew. He's a dirty cop.
I'm telling you, he's dirty.
The investigators aren't sure what to make of Isaiah's allegations against Matthew.
Okay. As of right now, you're free to go. But we will be in touch.
Yeah, I bet.
When the detectives follow up with Isaiah's family in Memphis, his alibi checks out.
His mom said he spent the night at her house, and she even had pictures of Isaiah and his daughter at her graduation.
Was it possible Isaiah had been telling the truth about Matthew, too?
The investigators were curious about the comments about Matthew being a dirty cop, so they dug a little bit deeper.
At first, what they uncovered about Matthew wasn't especially troubling.
They find out he had resigned from his previous force in Olive Branch.
But when they reach out to a contact at Matthew's former precinct, they hear his resignation might have been more complicated.
They hear rumors that he didn't just resign, he was asked to.
He allegedly had left the employment with the city of Olive Branch under a cloud of suspicion.
Apparently, there had been some questions about his conduct during an investigation.
But it was the circumstances of the crime that really raised a red flag.
Someone close to him was killed by a gunshot wound to the head.
Eventually, it was ruled a suicide.
Allegedly, at one point, he was a possible suspect.
MBI investigators have just uncovered a possible reason for Dominique Clayton's boyfriend, Matthew Kenny, resigning from his job with another police department.
A woman had died from a gunshot wound to her head.
Initially, there was a suspicious death.
However, the investigators concluded that it was a suicide.
But a contact at the department implied that the detectives investigating that death had considered Matthew a person of interest at some point.
He was never arrested, but there would have been a reason that he was a suspect.
Okay.
Regardless of his innocence, questions surrounding the incident led him to resign.
Matthew moved to Oxford, Mississippi, and took a job there at the police department.
And once settled in Oxford, Matthew had met Melissa.
They got married and had another child together.
So she thought that she was in a happy relationship and she was building something with someone that she could trust and love.
But what Matthew's wife didn't know was that her husband was leading a double life.
3 years after moving to Oxford, Matthew began his affair with Dominique.
She was aware that he was married.
She was under the impression that he was going to leave his wife.
Instead, Mississippi Bureau of Investigation agents are trying to solve her murder. and the details of Dominique's death, a single gunshot wound to the head, are eerily similar to another case Matthew was rumored to be linked to.
Is this just a coincidence?
There seems to be some sort of pattern.
However, despite the rumors, MBI investigators discover that Matthew Kinney was absolved of any connection to the previous suspicious death.
He was totally exonerated.
But now a suspect in Dominique's death. They decide to take a closer look at Matthew's movements the night of the murder.
They subpoena Matthew's phone records.
Maybe he'd followed Dominique home?
The tower data from his cell phone should allow investigators to track his movements.
When the investigators receive the records, they appear to confirm his initial account of the evening.
Matthew's cell phone records showed that he did pick up Dominique and then return to the stables.
He was also at the stables when Dominique called him at 12:30.
And 2 hours later,
He was at the stables around 2:30 in the morning when he sent that goodnight text.
Which appeared to suggest he'd never left the stables.
or at least his phone never left.
They kept digging through the records and eventually spotted something unusual.
There were no records of activity for about an hour and a half.
He didn't contact anyone else, didn't use social media or use the internet.
Although if Matthew did ditch his phone, investigators have a pretty good guess about where he'd gone.
The investigators figured he'd left his phone behind so he could sneak back to Dominique's place.
The question is, could they prove it?
Unable to use his cell phone to track his location, their next move is to use surveillance videos from around the neighborhood to see if Matthew can be placed at the crime scene during that time.
Police don't find anything in that neighborhood, but just a little ways away, they find a convenience store video.
One of the store's cameras covers the intersection just outside Dominique's neighborhood.
They got the footage, and when investigators reviewed the recording from the night of the murder, they got a break.
When they pull the video, they'd see an Oxford police car.
The Oxford Cruiser is crossing the intersection at about 2:05 in the morning.
The footage isn't clear enough to make out the driver or the number on the cruiser, but the investigators suspect it's Matthew behind the wheel.
They immediately contact Oxford police to find out if there is a reason for a cruiser to be in that area at the time.
After checking with dispatch, they find that no officers should have been in that vicinity at that time.
So why was there an Oxford police car on surveillance in that area?
It's more than enough for the investigators to bring Matthew back in for a second interview.
They tell him they've discovered some things.
Look, I'm just gonna get right to it.
You have the right to.
They begin to read him his Miranda rights.
He knows the drill. He waives his right, though, to an attorney.
You don't need that.
He says he's willing to talk.
And this time, he's not holding back.
I just wanted my old life back. Just hold on, okay?
Convinced that Matthew Kinney killed his girlfriend, Dominique Clayton, MBI investigators have brought the Oxford police officer in for a second round of questioning.
This time, it sounded like he was on the verge of confessing.
I just wanted my old life back.
He told the cops he got tired of what he believed to be constant pressure from Dominique to do more and more for her.
I'm not a millionaire.
He said that their relationship became a serious strain on his finances.
And he actually tried to cut things off.
But according to Matthew, all that had done was make things worse.
He tells police Dominique threatened to tell his wife about the affair.
He then decided that the only way to end the affair was to get rid of Dominique.
I didn't know what else to do.
All he needed was an opportunity. One that came early on the morning of May 19th.
You want me to come over when I get off later?
No, not tonight.
He saw the opportunity when she told him she was tired and going to go to bed.
That night was his chance.
He left his cell phone at the stables so it couldn't be tracked, and loaded a .380 round into his service weapon.
He did not use the bullets provided by the city. He changed it out, a different caliber bullet. He thought he knew how best to cover his tracks.
Matthew seemed to be pretty confident, almost overconfident.
He got into a squad car, left, and slipped into Dominique's house and stood over her, watching her while she slept.
He said at first he couldn't bring himself to kill Dominique.
He's just standing over her. He's looking at her. He's torn. He doesn't do anything.
But after a few moments of hesitation, his fear of being exposed as a liar and a cheat won out.
He's like, I have no choice. I have to do this, and I can't think about the consequences.
He got wrapped up in his wants and thought this is the only way out, where he could continue on with his life and maybe make right his relationship with his wife.
Whatever his motivation, once Dominique was dead, Matthew had carried on with his plan.
After he shot her, he said he left her house and went back to the stables.
On the way back to work, he throws out his shell casing.
Since the .380 is less powerful than the 9mm, the gun fired, but no casings ejected, which is why none were found at the crime scene.
Then at 2:30 a.m., he'd sent Dominique the goodnight text, knowing she'd never read it.
But he knew that the phone records would show that he sent the text from the stables.
And shortly after that, he went ahead and went home.
He thought he was gonna get away with it.
Instead, his carefully thought out plan had gone all wrong.
Matthew Kinney,
Hold on.
you are under arrest.
Once he confessed, the investigators placed Matthew under arrest for the murder of Dominique Clayton.
But an arrest is a long way from justice. And as the case moves toward trial in the summer of 2020, the stakes have never been higher.
This was the summer that George Floyd had been murdered.
So you had a white married man, a cop in Oxford, who allegedly has killed a young black single woman, mother of 4. And then you had these individuals in Minnesota who heinously killed George Floyd. And so people were just tuned in to all of the different atrocities happening across the country, especially to unarmed black men and women.
There were tensions arising between the black community and police officers.
No one is feeling safe at this time. No one feels like the police are protecting and serving like they should be.
As protests against police brutality spread across the nation, Oxford was no exception.
It was very intense. Tensions were high. And this was a case in which family members believed that Matthew would not be held accountable.
But as the tumultuous year of 2020 gave way to 2021, it appeared that Matthew may have been feeling the heat.
In July of 2021, he pled guilty to murder.
He was sentenced to life in prison.
The family and the community was elated.
This was justice for Dominique and for all of the other victims who suffered at the hands of the police.
The Oxford community sent a resounding message to Matthew that he was not above the law. even though he did once wear blue.
He got exactly what he deserved.
Some would say justice was served. Others continue to say that that's not enough, that laws need to change. Simply putting an officer behind bars is just not enough to fix the wounds of our past.
And no outcome will ever be enough to make up for what Matthew did to Dominique, her 4 children, and her family.
Dominique's family has endured so much trauma since her death.
The world is not the same without her.
She was a sister, a daughter, a mom. She'll never get to see her children grow up. She deserved it.
I think about those 4 children constantly. I'm hoping that they can rebuild their lives, but no one will ever be able to replace their mother.
By doing the things that he wanted to do. Michaela wanted to please Gerald Lowe.
You have to be mindful of who you surround yourself with. You know, have your own conscience, be able to make decisions on your own. When you recognize that things are not aligned with your values, then sometimes you have to exit stage left.
Young ladies just need to know their worth. You don't need this dude to manage your life. You can manage your own life. You're intelligent, you're beautiful. You can get out and do your own thing. Once you get past that hurdle and learn to love yourself, you can do anything. You can do anything.
If home is where the heart is, what happens when that heart is filled with hate? Before you know it, the darkness can consume you, and your only chance for escape is to burn the home to the ground.